Hi, this is Phyllis Haislip, and this is episode 2 of the Phyllis and Laurin show. She made me start first. So she's going to begin to talk today about a little bit about her first book and how she happened to write it. What is your first book, Laurin, and how did you happen to write it?
First book is called The Devil of Kilmartin. It was I like to call it my debut novel. It's a Scottish historical romance written in the medieval times. So if you've ever seen the movie Braveheart or anything about Robert the Bruce, that's the time period that I write in. I came to write it because I love to read them, and I was having a harder and harder time finding a good Scottish medieval romance that sort of fit all the things I was looking for in a book. I like a good plot, I like a little history, I like a great romance, and so that's what I set out to write for myself. I chose the setting because, first of all, I love Scotland. It's just a magical land. I also originally wanted to write science fiction fantasy, but didn't want to have to do all the world building. I'd rather learn the history than to have to create a whole new world. And medieval Scotland has, great warriors and strong women and lots of good conflict in the history.
So what do you think is the similarity between science fiction or utopian world building and the medieval world?
Anything can happen. There's a lot of conflict, but also anything can happen. And there was so much change happening culturally and historically and just in the lives of day-to-day people that I think that's the kind of thing that a good fantasy novel really focuses on, is how does an ordinary person deal with extraordinary circumstances.
So you're saying that history is fantasy?
Sometimes.
Yes, we're both writing fantasy. Both.
Well, it is a romance, so there is that element of making everything happen, the way, or end up the way you want things to end up. The happily ever after is a very important component of a romance. So yeah, in a way, I get to take history and make it happy at the end. And fiction, I think all fiction is, to some degree, is a fantasy, even if you're writing about real things, as Phyllis often writes about real things, but she's got to imagine how people would react or live in those times and places, and I do the same thing.
And how do you do your research?
If I'm lucky, I get to go to Scotland. I did that too long ago. I need to go back. That was the best, because I really got a lot of the impression of the place, the sense of the place. You could smell the air and you could hear the people talk, which I love a good brogue. But I also use the internet a lot. I use a lot of old books as well, so when I can find them. Lots of different ways to do it. And my imagination is very, very good for doing research.
What do you think is your appeal to Scottish romance? Do you think it's because real men wear skirts?
Well, there is always that. Nothing like a guy in a nice kilt. I think I saw my first kilt when I was 10, and my grandfather, who was Douglas Neil Magruder, he was the chieftain of the American Clan Gregor, and my grandparents took me to the Clan Gregor gathering one year, and I got to see lots of men in kilts and hear bagpipes. So there's certainly the draw of a man, a bra man in a kilt.
Well, the one problem I've never seen a man with good-looking knees, but that's another issue.
Well, I think you have to go to the calves.
Okay, right. Moving right along. Is there a big market for historical Scottish fiction?
There is, remarkably, there is. It's one of those perennial parts of the romance genre that has, certainly it ebbs and flows like everything else does in popularity, but it has, as long as I've been reading romances, which has been probably 20 years now, it's been popular.
I'd like you to kind of real briefly give us an insight. Don't tell us how the story comes out, but what's the story of The Devil of Kilmartin about?
It's about a chief who is having a hard time leading his clan because he has intermittent madness, and a healer who I've drawn on the mythology or the folklore of the Celtic healers, who heals with touch. And there's various conflicts about why she doesn't want to help him and why he needs her to help him. And ultimately they save the clan.
Thanks, Laurin. We'll talk about Scottish historical romance next time.